All right. Hello, everyone. Today is Tuesday, February 4th, 2020, and this is the weekly meeting of Kubernetes SIG Docs. So we just did new contributor moment before I started recording. So let's go straight to updates and reminders. PR Wrangling. This week's PR Wrangler is Caitlin Barnard. Caitlin doesn't usually make this meeting time. It is hard for her to make, but I will reach out and make sure that she gets a ping about wrangling. Next week's wrangler is Karen Bradshaw, aka KB Hockey. As always, approvers, please make sure that you know when your PR wrangling shift is scheduled, and if you need to reschedule for whatever reason, it is so much easier to do that in advance rather than the week of. Right, let's talk about docs. 1.18, how is that release going?
It's from doc side, I think so far so good. We have got our enhancement assignments and we are reaching to people, the PR owners, and asking if they need docs and all the process, and we are getting it tracked. And I put in a link there so that if anyone's interested, you can go and see. And I also learned something new yesterday in the process about GoDocs, which was great. That it automatically updates the K website. Still interesting to me. But overall, the status is green. I saw a couple of questions about the branch sync. I'm not sure when it is offsite, but I'll try to get an answer from him or like ping him on Slack to reach out to you guys for an update.
Cool. Thank you for the update. So I just pasted a link to the release-1.17 branch. Mm-hmm. And about, I want to say almost a month ago at this point, no, not quite that long, about 3 weeks ago, we talked about, or Vineet had a question about whether it was okay to force push master over the top of release-1.17. There was some question about which branch the Chinese localization should be working on. And as it turns out, release-1.17 is not the branch that they should be working out of or basing on. So we ended that discussion with the agreement that Vineet would force push master over release-1.17. It is better to do that earlier in the process rather than later. So I wonder, Savita, if you could boost the visibility of, just boost to Vineet that it would be good to see that force push happen like in the next week or so.
Definitely. I'll ask him if he's available, or I think Ivy and Seth have experiences in branch syncing before. I am new, so I'm eager to learn, but I don't know anything about branch syncing. I will ask them if they would be willing to, get this thing going before it's too late.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Cheers. I see no Seth McCombs. So security docs update. I'll say none this week. Likewise, I see no Caitlin. So none this week. Diagrams. So I don't see David Kiperos. So I wanted to give an update. I took an action item to contact folks within the CNCF and ask if anyone could recommend a graphic designer who could do the contracting piece for establishing a template for how to do Kubernetes diagrams, architecture diagrams well. I have not gotten any hits within the CNCF. So I want to boost that call more broadly. So this year, one of the things that we agreed to prioritize in the first part of this year was putting contractor spend and attention into making it possible to create and maintain Kubernetes architecture diagrams well and easily. So I am totally willing to wrangle the funding side of that at the CNCF. David Kiperos has agreed to drive like creating a scope of work, interfacing with a contractor, defining goals and deliverables, things like that. But David is searching for someone who can actually do that work. So if you are someone who can do that work or know someone who would be good at doing that work, please reach out to David, David K, and let him know.
I have some questions. Is there
Yeah.
Is there it seems like there needs to be a scope of work defined, and then there's also we're going to hire somebody, but is there sort of a loose scope of work already defined to make it easier to know who we're hiring, and what are the deliverables from that scope? Like, are we creating like a omnigraphal set of templates that anybody can use to create diagrams on their own, or do we have like a queue of diagrams that we want created for the site?
That is an excellent question. I just dropped a link into the agenda with the scope of work that's been created so far. Comments and revisions, totally welcome.
Awesome, thanks.
Cheers. So we have 2 items left on the agenda, the chair transition process and Doxy migration status. The chair transition is more nebulous. So let's talk about Doxy migration first. So to give folks an update, the contractor that I work with, or that I'm working with on this particular project, Gearbox, is doing the work. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think about how to summarize this briefly. The CNCF is funding Gearbox to apply the Doxy template to Kubernetes.io. And the way that the CNCF would like to fund this project is by arbitrarily applying the template to the different categories of the site. So documentation, blog, community, partners, case studies. I have asked Gearbox to apply to the docs first. They have done that work. They are doing the blog next. So the distinction of how to apply a Hugo template to a website and like do it piecemeal is it introduces an artificial complication into a process that shouldn't have it there. But this is the funding hand we are dealt. So I guess what would be helpful is would you like, what do you think is better, to see the template applied live to the site piecemeal, or to wait until it's until the site collectively is done? If we introduce the template piecemeal, like if we roll out the template now for docs, the docs will look great and nothing else on the website will. Tim?
I think there could be another option. I don't know whether the way that the template works, but you could ensure that it's possible to switch and generate 2 previews and make sure the site builds in 2 ways, and introduce that for a while. You know, so it's like a feature flag. You're ready to switch, but you do not switch, and you remain ready to switch.
So you're effectively saying like generate 2 Netlify sites per build, effectively. Am I understanding that correctly?
I would assume you'd use Netlify. Yeah, you something like that. I haven't thought it to that level of detail, but you would make sure that during the build, you generate a site which is the actual site, and you also generate some stuff which perhaps doesn't get served.
Yeah, we could do it. It would be, we would just have to create the new site in Netlify and specify the different Hugo build command. Hugo builds, you can build with a different template at the command line when you instantiate Hugo. So we give the Hugo command, we give Netlify the Hugo command to build with a different template and let that build on a staging site.
What I do not know is, does that get you anything? So like, for example, if you are doing a transition on a day, does that give you extra safety and help you avoid merging a problem PR, or is it a waste?
It's pretty well, so the thing is that this would strictly be a staging site. So like we can, I'm scrolling through the agenda looking for the notes. I've shared a staging link in the past, but I guess, so like, why would we do that apart from having a staging link to preview the effect of the template? Like, what would be the benefit to users of doing that, Tim?
So when we, the most analogy I can think of is when I saw another website switch over, and it was useful just to let them say that this change is going to happen. Nobody make any changes that stop that from being possible. Do not allow this, PRs that break things.
Sure. So, that's like a freezing the repo in advance of actually doing the release. And we already do that. So, like that's what our staging site does. So when Gearbox is ready to commit the code with the template work to K website, they'll open a PR to do that, and we can freeze the repo before that PR and say no one merge any PRs until this is merged and is successfully live in production. But I guess that seems like a sort of a fiddly bit level of process. And I would like to focus on do we start rolling this development work is happening piecemeal? Do we roll it out piecemeal, or do we wait until the development work is complete in order to roll out the template application?
I would wait until the development is complete, so that way there's consistent look and feel and user interface to the site. It's a little weird when like part of the site changes, but the other part doesn't. And I think it's easier to communicate to everybody using the site that this is a new rollout. When I think about it just from a communication strategy, if you are rolling out the site piecemeal, we should communicate that in advance. And like, hey, the doc site's going to change, but nothing else will change. But here's the timeline that those things are going to change by. So just from like setting expectations with folks, it's more complicated to roll it out piecemeal.
I do think it would be good if we gave advance notice of the site change and maybe offered folks a preview link to see what that would be like before we roll the changes out.
So to kind of offer a bit of a counter to roll it out piecemeal versus wait till it's all done thing, just to put it on the table. Because I think I agree, it's probably better to wait till the dev work's done. But Hugo actually does have a build flag for using a specific theme when you run a build. So instead of using the default theme, go use this other theme. So it actually is a possibility that we could start to bring in that dev work into master. And then, for example, at your will, build with the new theme, just because the other good point is make sure nothing breaks in the new theme that we're doing currently, right? So that's a possibility. and it's on the table. Now I'm going to mute.
Well, that sounds similar to Tim's suggestion, where like people can turn on the theme and turn it off. I'm totally not against. I just think if we cut over at some point and are like, here's the new theme and it's a new theme going forward, let's make sure the site's entirely done and, to your point, debugged.
Exactly. Like it might be good from just like a slow debugging process, because right now my understanding is that maybe we're working with a limited set of content and things will break, and it'll be easier to address those breaks bit by bit than all of a sudden with 1,000 files in 5 different languages, right? So it may be to our advantage to kind of slowly merge those in, just to make sure we aren't like missing an edge case that will screw us there in the end.
Yeah, great
That
points.
is an excellent. Yep, good point, Saul. The wrinkle in this is that because so with Hugo architecture, you know that there's a template directory. What is it? Static/templates, or wherever it is the templates live. It would be technically easy and socially dastardly to take a partial template application and apply that to the rest of the website without having to pay a contractor to do it. And that's out. So the contractor is understandably withholding the code until they get fully paid for the work for which they have contracted. So they are willing to build a staging site and share that URL. And we could definitely ask for, hey, we'd like to have like a debugging sprint where we go through this build, we note things that are wrong or obviously broken, and we give that feedback. But in terms of actually being able to look at and bang on the code, that will have to unfortunately wait.
Yeah, okay, fair. That is a wrinkle.
Yeah.
It's like, why don't they trust us?
I don't think it's about trust, it's about money, and it's fair, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
We don't really have a huge amount of choice, do we?
Tim.
Why don't we trust them? I mean, I work for a contracting firm. We do a lot of contracts. And is there a concern that if we pay all the money that the work will not get done? Is that something that is a concern?
No, sorry, I'm being really diplomatic with how I'm communicating the fact that the CNCF did not fund this effectively. Let me be less diplomatic about that and say it straightforwardly. The way that we're doing it is dumb.
So we have not paid them and like, here's a lump sum going.
We are paying them piecemeal, so they are introducing artificial roadblocks into a development process that should not have roadblocks. They are having to do extra work because of the way that we have decided to pay them.
Oh, okay. Well, I agree with your frustration.
Would it be inappropriate for me to make a joke about this contracting to the Jimmy Hoffa Hugo Consulting Company? I'm sorry. I digress.
You're not sorry. That right there is a big fat lie, Mr. Topol. But it was still funny. So, anyway, I agree. Let's test what we can to the maximum that we can. Let's communicate changes adequately and in advance. And let's make sure that we have time for us to bang on the code when it becomes available to us before it goes, before it becomes load bearing in production. Does that adequately address the collective concerns?
So it's not a concern, but I can see that there'd be a bunch of looking at staging sites to do. So we should schedule that, right? That should be an agenda item for the future.
Well,
or have I misunderstood?
We've already got a staging site when they open a PR, when the code becomes available, and the and Gearbox opens the PR to merge that code, our existing staging site, as with every other PR, will build a preview build that we can then bang on. Or are you, am I missing what you're saying?
Well, it seems like they've only tested this for the one section. I don't understand the roadblock, basically, and I don't understand contributors' role in helping with that roadblock.
The roadblock right now is that we can look at the preview build, we can look at the site that is generated with a staging link from Gearbox that they are hosting. They have the code is obfuscated to us. The generated build is not. They have provided a staging link. We can look at the generated results, but we cannot look at the code that produces those generated results. The roadblock is that if you look at kubernetes.io and you see how content is bracketed out in the top ribbon, documentation, blog, partners, community, case studies, they are applying the template to those sections one at a time. This is an arbitrary and unnecessary process. In order to apply a template, in order to apply a Hugo template to one specific section of a website and not to the website as a whole, they have to introduce waste into the system. Does that make sense? Not is it the best choice, but like, does that make sense?
Well, I think you were saying that there would be some sort of debugging, some snagging to do. And I'm trying to work out, is that something that I should schedule and think in the future there will be a week where I can contribute by helping with snagging and other people can help with snagging?
Yes, and when that week would be is contingent on the CNCF continuing to pay its invoices to its contractors effectively. So I will signal that as effectively as possible, as much in advance as I possibly can. At this point, I would broadly guess early to mid-March.
That makes sense.
Does that answer what you're looking for, Tim?
Well, it tells me that that you don't know an entirely good reason for not knowing, and that's fine. And I'll sort of subscribe for updates.
Okay. Cheers. Okay. Let us move on. Okay, so Brad, you've added a doc sprint for KubeCon Europe. That is also less nebulous than chair transition process. So let's talk about the doc sprint for KubeCon. Yes, I intend for there to be one. I have signed up with the Contributor Day folks to host a session for docs in the contributor space. And what would you like to say about that?
I couldn't remember if we had a definite plan for what we wanted to do with that, who was attending. So I was willing to creatively throw out a few ideas unless we had a definitive plan for, oh, Brad, don't you remember we set the agenda for this? And I can't believe, Brad, you didn't remember that.
Totally open right now, Greenfield.
Okay. So, I mean, one of the first questions, that anybody on the call going to be there besides myself and Zach? Anyone else going to be there? So we have a decent amount of time. Did we want to try potentially and do like we could do a couple different things. If we were in a position to debug the new template, we could do a debugging sprint. Don't know if the timing works for that. If we're like, hey, we're looking for a good sprint idea to to attract folks in and get them, you know, into docs, maybe we did a combination of, hey, we'll start out first. If you're new folks, we want to teach you how to contribute to docs. We'll do a little bit of a quick session on how to use Git, how to do, you know, basic pull request kind of stuff, and then flip over. We have all this great content on how to contribute. And I don't know if we've ever done a nice presentation where we go through that content and talk about, hey, this is how the pages work and what have you. So I was just going to throw it out. And then, of course, then we go into and let's get people doing their first PR or what have you. That's just kind of what popped in my head. But definitely open to suggestions, whatever people think.
So I did a similar thing at DockerCon a few years back, and it was really helpful as a new contributor. So I think that's a great idea, especially it looks like there's some other tooling to utilize Hugo and bring up the stage insight for yourself locally. I think that would be a great part to contribute as well and help people with that, because it seems like even for me starting with that, it's pretty challenging to get back.
Yes. We've gotten good feedback on documentation sprints in general, but we got, especially 2 years ago when we migrated the static site generator from Jekyll to Hugo, we did, Andrew Chen ran a doc sprint at Write the Docs in Portland to basically debug and file open issues and fix bugs against all of the artifacts that arose as part of that migration process. We did that like 2 sprints in a row. I think Jared and I did like the issue finding sprint in Copenhagen, and then Andrew ran the issue fixing sprint in Portland. So yeah, that's a model that works really well. And there'll be a little bit more distance between KubeCon EU and Write the Docs this year, but that's still like a possibility to do that timing again. So yeah, thank you, Brandon. That's good feedback. Celeste, it would be work on your part to do so Celeste is refactoring the contributor guide for Kubernetes docs, and this would be an excellent opportunity to do a walkthrough of the refactored content. So I don't want to volunteer you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. In case the follow-on effect, which will fall more on you than probably anybody else here, will probably end up being that I have to do some slightly larger PRs in that refactoring just to kind of get her done. Which is what it is. But forewarning, I'm happy to do it, but it means kind of some hefty things to.
Yeah. Well, it would be hugely helpful. And you got 2 months.
Famous last words. I'm sure it'll be fine within 2 months. And I think it would be good because I'm, again, as I mentioned to you last we spoke, Zach, finagling my way to Write Docs Portland this year as well. So it would also be like a good back-to-back because both you and I will potentially be at both of those. So.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, Brad, that was a good idea. Thank you.
Okay. So do we want to just work now on refining the agenda? So you like those choices for the doc sprint? Or do you have, or do you want to, is there still an option to maybe do the debugging sprint? Because I'm just trying to, what does our fearless leader think we ought to, which direction should we point the ship?
I think that they're both excellent options, and I don't think we have to choose right now. I think that, yeah, if we, I really like the idea of walking through refactored content for contributing. I think that's an excellent like introductory sprint. I also really like the idea of, if the timing works out, to be able to open issues against a newly templated set of content.
Mhm.
So
the nice thing is we typically have a little bit of buffer time. If I recall, we typically end a little bit early. So, you know, there's a potential that you could do a Hershey's peanut butter cup where you could mix the chocolate and the peanut butter. You could have sometimes for the issues and sometime for the walkthrough. I mean, so that I just want to toss that out. Celeste, that might be an idea as well.
I just,
Okay, cool.
a Hershey's peanut butter cup. I love it. Oh my goodness. I'm so charmed right now.
I didn't think Hershey's made peanut butter cups.
Oh my gosh, Reese's! I'm old. Thank you, Celeste. Thank you. This isn't being recorded, I hope. Oh, it is.
Oops.
I wasn't
Somebody
even thinking
edit that out.
Yeah,
Reese's
okay,
peanut
that
butter
sounds,
cup.
it sounds like we could potentially do both. Okay, that's all we're going to leave it at.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Hershey's peanut butter cup. Oh. I can't contribute any more
You've heard
than
it here,
that.
folks. Hershey's moving into the market.
As for
right.
the KubeCon thing,
Yes.
I am not sure what conferences I'm going to visit this year. KubeCon in Amsterdam is definitely on the list that I might go to. So I'm gonna watch these developments because it'll inform my decisions to get a ticket and go over.
Great.
Excellent. Okay, let's talk about chair transition. So two things. At our last quarterly review, I had talked about wrapping up my chair time by the end of March. So that was contingent on the SIG being in a place where stepping away would like where the SIG would be in a healthy enough place for me to step away and not like either lose legacy knowledge or otherwise be detrimental. And I don't think we're there yet. And I think also the CNCF wants to continue prioritizing a Docs presence in Kubernetes for at least the first half of the year. I will know more in the next 2 weeks and I will share it. But for now, I want to say that I am not stepping away at the end of March as SIG Docs chair. And I don't have a definite date yet for when the end of my term will be. Please believe I do not want to be chair for life. All things end, and my time as chair will as well. But I want to make sure that the SIG is in a really good place before I end my time. So that's the first piece. I'm not stepping away at the end of March. Past end of March. The second piece, we had talked also at the quarterly review meeting about Jennifer stepping down and Caitlin stepping up. Sorry, I just want to check chat really quick. No, Brad, absolutely no. So we had talked about Jennifer stepping down and Caitlin stepping up. And I opened an issue describing that change process and what was required. And the path for lazy consensus was that both Jennifer and Caitlin had to assent, leave a comment confirming that that transition was in fact happening. Neither of them have commented on that issue, and neither Jennifer commenting to step down nor Caitlin commenting to step up. That leaves us in a bit of a bind. Jennifer has fully moved on to her work in Stripe, so she's hasn't been responsive to anything around Kubernetes docs for a month. Having a non-responsive chair isn't good for the health of the community. So whether or not we immediately replace Jennifer with another candidate, we do need to take action to remove Jennifer as chair. I would love it if she came back and was full-time dedicated to Kubernetes. This is in no way a reflection of Jennifer's performance, which is nothing but stellar. But we can't just have a chair unresponsive out there in space with admin permissions. So that will mean that Jim or I will open an issue in the next week, giving like either, well, probably an issue in several places, but like an umbrella issue either in K website or in like K community, to give as much visibility as possible to the stepping down process. And the other piece of that is that sharing docs is really like a 3-person job. Jim is doing fantastic. But I don't want Jim to burn out. I don't want to burn out. So we need to think about having someone else step up. It would be great if Caitlin wanted to do that, but the lack of response to me says that maybe she isn't as ready as she thought she was. I can only speculate. I need to, it would be great to hear from Caitlin about this. But I want to put as much transparency into the process as possible, that we will have one chair step down without an immediate replacement. So Brad and Caitlin have been our chair shadows for the past several months. Brad, I don't want to force this discussion, so please don't feel any pressure at all to respond, but just to boost for your own visibility, that thinking about this would be a good time to think about what you want your own path to look like for becoming a chair, and what both if and when you'd like that transition to happen. So just to boost visibility into that as well. Also, if you are interested in being a chair, there's a lot to learn, but the work is really rewarding. And the on-ramp is long because there's a lot to know about the docs process. But I think we're pretty good at communicating information well. Yeah. So yeah, go, Brad.
Yeah, if I could just say a comment on that, my perception was, as a chair shadow, what was happening is I would keep getting work items and opportunities from yourself and Jim, so that they were work items that I would be learning more and more about being a co-chair. And so, that would be a very comforting process, so that when you and Jim felt like I had learned enough, no pressure, then yeah, I would be happy to step in. And so, my perspective is I'm happy to keep serving that in, it's like the old counselor in training, the old CITs. I'm happy to still be a chair in training. You need the official, however you all want to do it, but I'll keep certainly taking work items from you and Jim that you feel will help put me in a position to do more and more of that role. And then you all can comfortably decide if I'm there, because there's a little bit of imposter syndrome. It seems like a lot of things, but I don't want to say I'm ready for the chair, because it'd be very easy for you to say, well, you don't even know what you're getting into, Brad. So, but I'm happy to keep, yes, I could see that being a part of my role, that I'd be happy to be part of the trio. But I don't need any timetables. I just need, just like the work items you all gave me last week. Those were great learning work items. So I'll keep trying to be more of your person in training, if that plan makes sense to you and Jim.
Absolutely. So what I hear you saying is that you want to practice and grow more before you step fully into the role.
Yes, and yeah, I think that's probably the safest. If that makes sense. Unless you're like, what I'm saying, So to me, what I would be doing either way, I don't think is much different, because I still got so much to learn. But yeah, eventually you two will convince yourselves that he knows enough, and that's fine too. So it's you know, does that make any sense?
It does.
You know, if you thought I was ready, sure, give me the label. That's fine. And if you're like, well, you kind of just started shadowing, Brad, well, that's fine too. So it's, to me, it's more a decision by you and Jim, not just me, if that makes sense. You, Jim, and me.
Sure. And yeah, also done in consultation with
Yes,
all of
yes.
us in community.
Right. So I will keep trying to take work items that will help, you know, fill that role and even do that role. I'm a big believer in, well, do the role before you even get promoted to the role in life. So I'm just really cool with that. I don't need the title, if that makes sense, but I'm happy to do more and more to take the burden off you two burning out.
Cheers. Okay. So in the chair transition process, there is some confusion, but there is no chaos, if that makes sense. It's merely uncertainty. So that for transparency purposes. And that's what we have for our agenda. What else would folks like to talk about in the time we have left? All right. Next week, I would like to. I'd like to be more. Well, next week, let's talk about how we can create a better pool of good first issues. Because I feel like with new folks coming in, it would be really helpful to have a deeper and clearer pool of places for folks to get involved. Good first issues. So that will be for February 11th, next week. All right, last call. All right, that's a SIG meeting. Thanks, everyone. Have a good week.